Hello everyone, this is Modestas from our Frame team and welcome to our March release. We did few changes for field filter. First of all, I would like to show how field filter works. Basically, when we're requesting a distinct list, we can see that we are passing where clause for our main data source to limit this list. So whenever, for example, we filter db tools in deploy in namespaces, and when we will try to filter, for example, for menu group, it will show on the list which is available in this result set. So it means it also send namespace in dbtools the same filter string which was applied here. So that's a way how we limit this filter. But what if we're using external data source ID and we don't have all these columns? So for that one we introduced data use filter equals false. If you specify this markup in your data field filter declaration, it will not send filter string and where clause. Only master child criteria will be sent. So in that way you may not need to define all fields in your external data source. But of course then your list will not be filtered as it's shown here. Another thing about field filter changes, we added operator clear button. So whenever we want to clear only, for example, this or this filter, we can go here, press clear, and it will remove that from our filter string. That's it from field filter. Let's move on to our second long-awaited feature. So it's db manage query result editing. How it looks like, here I have some table. The main thing what we need that prime key would be in select list. So basically this view or table which we want to edit, it must have a prime key column, and that's how we get this icon here, enable editing. So whenever we enable editing, we can all grid is turned to editable and we can do some changes here. These changes are sent to server and basically it's saved. Main features what we support here is updating one row, it's inserting new record, batch update, batch delete. So if I show multi-select column, I can mark some of the rows to be deleted and I delete selected rows. So this works pretty well. And of course we have delete button here if you want to delete a record. We have support for all those checkboxes. If we have some date time field, then we can have when we can have this drop down date picker. We can choose dates and change them, so it works pretty well. One thing which is not yet working is basically pasta. You know this feature that in regular grid we can select some of the rows. If we copy them, we can see tab delimited data and we can move to another grid. In a regular grid it works fine, but for now it doesn't work for this grid, because for example if I try to pasta here, I can choose whatever method I want, but I will see that batch insert is not supported. But this is for a future change, so I hope you will like it. Let's move on. In Appframe we did not have any way how to obsolete database objects, so we joined forces with quality department, ST department, and basically we're introducing how we do it now. I can show you right away how we will obsolete maintenance apply permissions. Basically idea is that we want to get rid of all Solar procedures and replace them with database procedures. database procedures. So I have a message what I want to tell for users why what to use instead. So I'll just use feature which I showed you before. I will edit. I have obsolete column. So when I fill some data there, idea is that it creates version. If I open versions, I will see that this update will go through updater and all solutions will be updated as well. Of course, there's some negative impact that when I open it in DB Manager, I will see not actual code but script which obsoleted it. Well, maybe it's a good thing, maybe not, but if we need to see a code, we can always go to versions and see that code there. So how it looks in real world. So I will go to dev test pim system, and you will see that we already obsoleted the message send immediate SMTP, and we would like to change it with database stored procedure alternative to send immediate. Basically these are almost the same procedures, and here we can see the list of objects which are using this Celar procedure. Currently we are marking articles, database objects, assemblies, and Win projects. Basically, idea that currently we only can find that these objects are using it, and we will keep working to extend it, that we could mark also code modules, site setup scripts, and other Appframe objects which we use. That's it for obsoleting objects. Let's move on to highlight list. So we also extended the frame search procedure in this release, and we added search in schedulers and article data object unique tables. So it means before we were looking for some search criteria only in data object view names. Now we're also searching in unique tables. And schedules, if we see here, we can have a scheduled procedure to run, or we can have some async job to run. So now we will be looking in this table as well, and that's the main reason of this is basically we want to encourage everyone not to use SQL Server agent jobs, but to use scheduler instead. Another long-awaited feature is ability to compare transactions. So basically now we're able to compare not applied transactions to existing versions. It should really be helpful for clients who has some customizations and don't want to apply everything, but instead they just want to see some of the changes. So let's see how it looks like. This object, you saw how I changed it. So if I press on version now, it's not applied yet, but I can see that this was before and now I'm applying such version. This is for database object. I can show you another example how it looks like. So basically, yeah, right. So this is our current version, and we can see lookup here as well. And here we can see what changes we're bringing in. For database objects, second time. For web script, it also looks the same. So we have two versions, and we see what's being changed. Maybe more interesting example could be web article. Basically, I did some dummy changes here. I added some empty spaces just for you to show. So, but we can see what web article is being applied and what changes it is bringing. Yeah, so for now it's currently only some spaces and some database object changes. Why I'm showing different objects? Because I would like to present our next highlight. It's compare article unification, and it means that or compare tools will point to the same article, which will look exactly the same in all places. We by default it always show only differences. We can, if for example object has more than one item to compare, it will have show difference only tab, and also to show the sidebar, because basically I'm not sure if all the time we are interested in all objects. Maybe we're interested only in those who were updated, added, or deleted. Not much to tell about it, so let's move on to our documentation updates. First in our list is SQL templates. Well, basically these articles I just moved from our former documentation site, but why I'm showing you this, maybe not everyone knows that we have some customizable templates for tables in PIM system, for tables, views, and triggers. So basically in this way you can create your own TBVs with custom security check, custom columns. The same applies for triggers. We can have custom security check and so on. So just check them out. Also we have added a whole section for GitHub. Basically we're moving more and more code to GitHub. Basically our all core libraries are in GitHub, and in 365 system all assemblies also being moved to GitHub. So basically this documentation describes how to use GitHub, how to set up pipelines for auto builds, and so on. Also we have added some documentation to start from Windows app development. This is really also quite new thing, and for those who would like to start checking it out, this is a good place to start from. And we moved some older documentation from our former documentation site, and we added code stack, and for now we called it overriding data handler. Basically we adding all methods that which we can override, and also added a few examples how to use them. Basically we have retrieve, update, create, bulk destroy, bulk insert, row count, and distinct data methods. All of these are using by our data object. So retrieve is getting data, update updating, create creating, bulk destroy, bulk insert, it's for bulk operations, row count to get actual row count, and distinct data. This one is used for field filter when it's getting distinct list, basically. And if you override any of these, you can change the logic to which you want to. Our first example is client-side validation. Basically, it's quite old example. We got it from one of products. They needed to do some custom validation before sending request to the server. So code is quite simple. Basically we are saving reference to standard data handler, update data handler, and we are overriding it with our own one. We are implementing some validation. Here just ask questions to proceed or not, and if it presses OK, it basically reuses our standard handler to send data, and in that way we have pdata object which we can change how we want to. Another example is also shows how we can change data before retrieving data. So here in our example we have almost the same as in previous example. We just save a reference to our old handler and overriding that one. What we do, we just add additional property fields. We're telling our backend to send a different field list from the server. All this prior part, it's just gathering fields. In this case we're gathering fields from grid headers. adding them to some array. Also, maybe it's not always enough to have fields from our data grid header list. We need to add some additional fields which might be used in data if, data class, and other places in our code. Uh, in this part, we creating a list of fields which we want to remove, and in this part we are doing actual remove stuff. So basically we have two properties. One is get fields, which we see all the time, so we just get an index of the fields we need to remove and remove it. And also we need change property of initial fields. Well, we have two two places where we store our fields. One comes from constructor and another comes from basically runtime. So that's why we need to do both. Also, another thing we need to do is update field name for data objects. So whenever we change definition of our fields, we need to invoke this method to make things right in data object, because it also inside has some references which is hard coded from our constructor. And by using this example, we will make a different select list instead of what we would have by default. This could be useful in situations where we don't know initially what fields we will need, and these fields might be customized per user, per domain. So instead of having all fields in select list, in this way we could change them. And when we have our new list of fields, this list will be reflected in column chooser and filter builder fields, where we can select them. Uh, and moreover, as I'm here, one of the frequently asked questions from us is how to change captions in column chooser and filter builder. So there's one easy way. Basically, when we generate those lists, we are creating them from captions, not actual fields name, but we're using fields captions. So straight way is just, if you see here my code, I'm taking data object, I'm getting a specific field and I'm assigning new caption. Basically this article ID will become new article caption. So for instance, if in this column chooser now I have article ID, I need to refresh a page because this will work only on initially. So if I change it now, I will see new column caption. The same will be applied in my field list in the filter builder, new article caption. And moreover, due to our translation concept, for example, if I do filter here, as you see in filter string, we also see the same. So for a user it looks and feels really good, but under the hood we will still send correct filter string. And the last thing I would like to show you why it's so important to keep select list as short as possible. One thing that it comes from SQL best practices. Another thing that when we make a request and we return more data, it might become more slow. And another thing. I have a view here. It's just regular join, so I will just turn to show plan. When I'm executing this query, it will say that in my plan it's using two tables, but if I'm not using another column, this another column comes from left join table. If I execute this one, I'll see that now it works only for one table. This is very good to know. SQL Server does this performance thing for us. So in this case, of course, it might not give an effect of performance, but in your case I guess you might have really many joins them, and you should consider having your application to select only the fields which you really need. Also, you may know that if you're using where clause, for example, is not null, it still works. So thanks for watching, and see you next release.